So, but now I'm going to go to a little bit of a story time real quick. I'll share, and we're going to go to story time and talk about some myths. So if you should have gone with me in a little less motion sickness version of Prezi. So a couple of things. So back in the day, I mean, we're talking in the late 90s, I started doing time management workshops. And I did it because when I was in college, I was horrible at time management. I mean, literally, I ran, if you've ever heard of Campus Life, I ran a big club and I had probably 6 or 7 staff people while I was in college. And the way that I managed my time was I had 3x5 cards and a pencil, and I would just write stuff down. And then my staff knew that they could get a hold of me between classes because I'd fall asleep in the student union and I'd wake up with notes stacked up on my chest. So I realized I had a problem, and the best way to get out of that problem was to figure out, number one, how to do time management, and then teach others how to do time management, because I had a hard time figuring it out. And when I'd lead time management workshops, 2 types of people would come. One would be the person whose boss said, you need to go. And the other was the person who was great at time management and wanted to make sure that they were still better than me. And as I did these things, we realized that, man, it wasn't about time management, because you can have a great looking calendar and color coded and moved all around and all that kind of stuff, even if it's electronic. But if you don't have the energy to perform when it was time to show up, wouldn't matter how good your calendar to look. It was like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, and it's still going down. So I realized there had to be more to it than just managing your time and keeping a good calendar. Also, along with that, I was in this pursuit. So there's that first myth, the myth of time management. And the second myth, the story is, I was pursuing this concept of work-life balance. That we could take, first of all, a balance, you tend to see 2 platforms on a balance and a scale. And I began to think of it as, well, 3 platforms. You have work, life, and sleep. And if you were to put the weights on there, there'd be 8 chips on work, 8 chips on balance, or on life, and 8 chips on sleep for each hour of the day. And that's just a myth. That can't happen. So when I started doing a deeper dive into not only leadership and professional development, but specifically around emotional intelligence, brain science, and whole person approach, I realized that the myth of this work-life balance and time management, I felt really bad because I was teaching time management. I was teaching a myth. And then I was trying to help others and myself with work-life balance, and that didn't work either. So I started to think there has to be a mind shift. There has to be some other way to think about these things. And that's when I started to look at all this stuff, and it became really aware, or I became very aware of one of the fundamental pieces of the whole person or work-life balance, which is this idea of self-awareness and self-management. It hits both those things. And Rob's aware with some of my background in this and how we are teaching executives about emotional intelligence. And really it comes down to, I mean, raise your hand if you've looked into ESC, emotional intelligence, emotional social competencies. That's really a big thing right now, especially in education. And I think it comes back to, if we can get some, shift our minds to think of time management and work-life balance in the sense of its self-awareness and self-management, I think it'll do us some favors. So what I want you to do is I'm going to go to this thing called story observations, and I want you to take a minute, and all you have to do, I'll show you right now by sharing the screen, but all you got to do to interact on this is double click anywhere on the screen and you'll get a post-it note, and then you can type your thoughts in a post-it note. And I want you to react to the myth. If those things are myth, and just react to the story. What do you think about the myth of time management and work-life balance and the mind shift to those things? What do you think? I'm going to turn you loose and just want to take a couple of minutes for you guys to double click and give your thoughts on the myths. I know that one of my observations of my own story, as soon as I let go that work-life balance was possible, that I felt freedom. I felt like I wasn't a failure because I couldn't do it. Yeah. And I don't know who put it in there, but does anybody feel guilty when their calendar is not full? And you think that I'm doing such a fabulous job because look, I've got family in one color, I've got this project in another color, and and it's so easy to do with the calendar wraps these days.